Houses and Homes in Great Britain and the United States. A Culture Capsule by George Galvanovsky. So first of all, we're going to start with the contents. We're going to start our video with a pretest. In the pretest, you will have several questions for you to answer, but don't worry, if you cannot answer those, you will see the answers to the pretest questions. We'll also discuss the vocabulary that you might find difficult. Then we'll continue with the houses. We'll talk about what is a house in English. We'll see the difference between house or home. We'll see how flat is different from an apartment, if it is different. We'll talk about what is a condominium. I will tell you how the English speakers count rooms in their flats or apartments or houses. Then we'll take a look at how you can speak about floors, area, neighborhoods, groups of houses. We'll also talk about the types of houses in Great Britain and about the types of houses in the USA. And finally, there will be a post-test to check how well you understood and remember the information from this video. And finally, there will be extended activities for you to have additional practice on houses and homes and speaking about houses and homes in English. And finally, there will be some references for you to know where I took the information from. Now, let us start. First of all, the pretest. In the pretest, there will be 10 questions, and I strongly recommend you to stop your video for you to think for some time, and then you will see the answers. So, first, the questions. Question 1. What does house typically mean in English? Question 2. What is a studio flat or apartment? Question 3. What is a condominium or condo? Question 4. How do you call a place for students to live in? Question 5. Which is better, suburbs or inner cities? Question 6. Which is better, a mansion or a slum? Question 7. What is the English for a group of houses built close together in a planned way? Question 8. What is a bungalow? Question 9. What is a brownstone? Question 10. Whom do council houses belong to? Now stop your video and try to think about the answers. Don't worry if you do not know the answers to these questions, you will after watching this video. Stop your video now. Now let us take a look at the pretest answers. First, a house is a building for people to live in and often has more than one level or story. Answer 2. This is a one-room flat or apartment. Answer 3. It is an apartment usually owned by the person who lives there. Question 4. In the UK, students live in residence halls or halls, and in the USA, they live in dormitory or dorm. Question 5. Suburbs. Suburbs are better than inner cities, because inner cities have high and usually poor population, and there are old buildings in bad conditions. Mansion. Mansion is a big nice house while slums are old and poor and in rather bad condition. 7. In the UK, this is called housing estate, and in the USA it is housing development. Answer 8. A fairly modern house which is all on ground level. This is your bungalow. Question 9. What is a brownstone? A brownstone is a house with a front of soft reddish brown stone, common in New York City. And the last one, to the local town or county council, for which the family living in it pays rent. Now let us start with the video itself. First, we'll talk about the vocabulary that you will need for the video. To rent. To afford something. Unrepaired, unattended, in poor condition. To consider. Brick. Decorations. Plain. To own something. Cozy. Thatched roof. Now, to rent is to pay to live in a house. To afford something, to have enough money to buy something. Unrepaired, with no old parts replaced. Unattended, not clean, tidy or repaired. In poor condition, really bad to live in. To consider is to think. Brick is building material made of red, wet clay, which is hardened by heat. Decorations. Decorations are things to make something beautiful. Plain means with no decorations. To own something, to have something as your own. Cozy is warm, nice and pleasant. And finally, thatched roof. This is roof covered with straw or other grass. First, what is a house in English? A house is a building for people to live in and often has more than one level or story. What is the difference between a house or a home? The place where you live is your home, whatever type of house it is. And a house is somebody else's home. In American English, both words could be used interchangeably. And in the picture, you see a traditional English house in Cheltenham, UK. The difference between a flat and apartment. A set of rooms, including a kitchen and a bathroom within a larger building, is called a flat in British English, and apartment or condominium in American English. Now, what's a condominium? In the USA, an apartment is usually rented, so you pay to live in it. But a condominium is usually owned by the person who lives there. In the picture, you can see a condo in Tampa, Florida. And the short for condominium is condo. Now, how many rooms are there in a typical flat or house? In the USA and in Great Britain, people count only bedrooms as rooms. So a flat or apartment with one bedroom and a living room would be one bedroom apartment. With two bedrooms and a living room will be two bedroom apartments, and so on. What if there is only one room? How would you call this apartment a flat? In the UK, a small one-room flat is called a bedseat or studio flat. In the USA, such an apartment would be called a studio or an efficiency. Now, which floor is your apartment on? In American English, the first floor is on the same level as the ground, and the second floor is the next level above this. Now, if you take a look at the picture, you will see the first floor is just above the ground, just the same level as the ground, while the second floor and the third floor are the next floors. Now, in the British English, the situation is a bit different. In British English, the part on the same level as the ground is called the ground floor, and the first floor is the next level above this. If you take a look at the picture, you will see that the floor closest to the ground is called ground floor. And the first floor is what is called second floor in American English. So be careful, in British English it is a bit different. Now, where do students live? In Great Britain, a large building at a college or university where students live is called a hall or a hall of residence. Now, in the USA, such housing is also called a dormitory or dorm. Now, the area that your house is located in. Generally, people in the USA and in the UK live outside the city center, in the suburbs. Suburbs is an area away from the center of the city, especially where there are houses with gardens. Now, what if it is a really big house? A large, grand house is called a mansion, or if it belongs to a king or a queen, a palace. People who cannot afford living in suburbs live in inner city. Inner city is a central part of the city, especially an area with high and usually poor population, old buildings in bad conditions, etc. When a house is in a very poor condition, unrepaired and unattended, it could be called a slum or slums. Slums are usually in the center of the city, and could also be called a ghetto. Housing estate, a piece of land on which houses have been built, usually close together in a planned way. This is called housing development in the USA. Now we're going to talk about types of houses in Great Britain. We'll speak about Georgian house, bungalows, council houses, detached houses, semi-detached houses, terraced houses, cottages, and tower blocks. Now, Georgian house. It comes from the time of 4 British kings called George from 1714 to 1830. And these houses considered to be very attractive, and they are often built in a neoclassical style from red brick with white stone. Bungalows. Those are fairly modern houses which are all on ground level. In Britain, many old people live in bungalows. Council houses. A house or flat owned by the local town or county council, for which the family living in it pays rent. They are usually fairly small plain houses on estates. They are cheap to rent, and usually working class people live in such houses. In the USA, they are called housing projects. Since 1980, more people have been able to buy their houses from the council, so there are now fewer houses owned by local councils. Detached house. Detached house is a house not connected in any way with any other building. Many British people think that a detached house is the best type of house to have. Semi-detached house. This is a house that is one of a pair of joined houses, called a duplex in the USA. Now, terraced house. A house which is part of a terrace, and a terrace a row of houses joined to each other. In the American English, those houses are called townhouses. And they are also called a row house in the USA. Cottage. Cottage is a small house, especially an old one in the country. And people often think of cottages in a very romantic way, as being cozy and safe and having a thatched roof and roses round the door. Tower blocks. This is a tall block of flats or offices. Now we're going to talk about houses in the USA. We'll talk about Victorian houses, plantation houses, farmhouses, log cabins, row houses, New England houses, brownstones, ranch houses, and mobile homes. Finally, we'll discuss apartment blocks. Now, Victorian houses. Victorian houses were mainly built during the Victorian period, 1837–1901, when Queen Victoria ruled the UK, typically made of red brick and often decorated on the outside. Now, inside the Victorian house, they usually had furniture made of dark-colored wood and a lot of ornaments and photographs and frames. And the fireplaces were usually highly decorated and surrounded by attractive tiles. Now, plantation houses. Plantation houses are found in the southern states of the USA. Plantation houses are large, expensive, white and columned. Farmhouses. The main house on a farm where the farmer lives, as simple as that. In the pictures you can see different examples of farmhouses. Log cabin. This is a house, usually a small one, made of logs or wood. Log cabins and presidents. Abraham Lincoln, one of the greatest US presidents, was born in a log cabin. Most children learn this fact in school because it is supposed to show that you do not have to come from a rich, powerful family to become a president. Apartment blocks. They are also called apartment buildings or houses. This is a large group of buildings containing many apartments. Housing project. If a group of apartment blocks was built for poor families and with the government money, it is called a housing project or simply project. This is the same as council housing in Great Britain. Row houses. This is a house which is part of a terrace. Terrace is a row of houses joined to each other. Another word for a row house is a townhouse. These are called a terraced house in Great Britain. New England house. This is typically a neatly painted white wooden house. New England, the states of the northeastern US, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Brownstones. These are houses with a front of soft reddish brown stone common in New York City. Mobile house. This is also called a trailer house. Mobile houses have very small wheels and can be moved from their usual place, which is usually in a special area, with other mobile houses. And usually only very poor people live in such houses. Ranch house. This is a house built on one level with a roof that does not slope much. Usually on a ranch in which the rancher and his or her family live. In the picture you can see an example of a ranch house in Los Angeles County, California. This is the end of the video, and you're going to go through the post-test to see how well you remember the information from the video. You'll have to answer the same questions as you did in the pre-test, so I believe it will come easier on you this time. Don't worry, there will be answers after the post-test. So, question number 1. What does house typically mean in English? Question number 2. What is a studio flat or apartment? Question 3. What is a condominium or condo? Question 4. How do you call a place for students to live in? Question 5. Which is better, suburbs or inner cities? Question 6. Which is better, a mansion or a slum? Question 7. What is the English for a group of houses built close together in a planned way? Question 8. What is a bungalow? Question 9. What is a brownstone? And question 10. Whom do council houses belong to? Now stop your video to think and to come up with the answers. I strongly recommend that you write your answers on a piece of paper so that you will be able to check your answers with the answers that you will see next on screen. Please stop your video now. Now post-test answers. What is a house? A house is a building for people to live in and often has more than one level or story. Answer 2 is a one-room flat or apartment. Condominium. Condominium, it is an apartment usually owned by the person who lives there. Where do students live? In the UK, students live in a residence hall or hall, and in the USA, they live in a dormitory or dorm. Question 5. Which is better, suburbs or inner cities? Actually, suburbs are better because inner cities have high and usually poor population, old buildings in bad conditions. Which is better, mansion or slums? Mansion is actually better because it is a big, nice house, while slums are old and in poor condition. The answer 7 is in the UK it is housing estate, and in the USA it is housing development. The question was about the group of houses. Answer 8. A bungalow is a fairly modern house which is all on ground level. Answer 9. Brownstone is a house with a front of soft reddish brown stone, common in New York City. Answer 10. To the local town or a county council, for which the family living in it pays rent. Now next, you will see some extended activities for you to get some practice in remembering and using the information that you have seen in this video. Extended activity 1. Say if the following statements are true or false. 1. Abraham Lincoln was born in a row house. 2. In the UK, people think of a cottage as a romantic house in the village with roses by the door. Statement 3. A row house in the USA and a terrace house in the UK is the same type of houses. 4. A bungalow and a ranch house are the same. 5. Brownstones are typical of Los Angeles. 6. A large grand house is called a mansion. 7. An efficiency is the same as a studio. 8. In the UK, council houses aren't cheap to rent. 9. Plantation houses can be seen in the western states of the USA. Stop your video now, think, and decide if these statements are true or false. If you're having problems, if you can remember that, strongly recommend you go back to the video and watch it again and continue with your extended activity then. Extended activity 2. Mark the following phrases UK if they belong to Great Britain and US if they belong to United States. Cottage, ranch house, row house, semi-detached house, apartment block, flat, plantation house, council housing, housing estate, and housing project. Please stop your video now for you to think and to mark those phrases on a piece of paper using UK or US. To check your answers, you'll have to go back and re-watch the video. This is the last extended activity 3. You'll have to fill in the gaps with the right word. 1. A house not connected on any side with any other building is called a gap house in the UK. 2. A duplex in the USA is a gap house in the UK. 3. A gap house has very small wheels. 4. The first floor in the USA is the gap floor in the UK. 5. When a house is in a very poor condition, unrepaired and unattended, it could be called a gap. 6. An area away from the center of a city, especially where there are houses with gardens, is called the gap. 7. A set of rooms, including a kitchen and bathroom in a larger building, is called a gap in the UK or gap in the USA. Please stop your video now. Use a piece of paper for filling the gaps. If you're not sure what answer to choose for every specific gap, please rewind your video and watch the appropriate information again. Now, for this video, I used the information from Longman Dictionary of English Language and Culture and also the information from Longman Essential Activator. Now, this is the end of the video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.